Welcome to the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg, and tonight we have a guest here, Veronica Tash. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Oh,
Um, I'm Veronica Tash. I do some YouTube. There should be some links going into the YouTube description or whatnot. Also, a PhD student in political theory. What I do for my day job, you can figure out if you really look, but not going to go into that here.
yeah, I got 5 more years before I give up my night job, and so I'm looking forward to that. Trying to you know grin and bear it. So just 5 years and 2 weeks left before I retire. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that I'm going to dedicate my time to maybe labor, labor organizing. So I'm not going to sit and just wither away like a lot of people do when they retire. So
Oh, you only last about a year if you do that.
exactly, I don't know why people fall into that trap. When they retire, they just like they decide, well, I'm just not going to do anything, and then they wonder why they have go through a lot of health crisis later.
Because they
So
didn't have freedom their entire working life.
yeah, so. But a lot of people do find ways to buy their times, and as long as you're doing it by your own rules, that's what matters. So um politics, I think we are in the same orbit as far as politics, specifically both democratic socialists. Um Describe your politics if you don't mind.
Okay, I am definitely a democratic socialist in the Orwellian sense, meaning uh, Orwell separated socialism from Stalinism by calling it democratic, is the big issue. And so I am definitely for collective ownership and control of the means of production. You can't have collective control without democracy. You need rights. I am definitely a big promoter of democracy itself. We do not have that here in America. Haven't I'm not sure we ever had it.
Well, we're losing it. Actually, we may have had it a little bit more. We may have had what we call minor improvements over the years, and we're seeing those rights wither away.
The last 40 years, at least, it's been pure oligarchy, proven by Gillens and Page. Great paper.
Yes, as far as Orwellian, I hardly ever describe that term, but I do embrace it because I understand Orwell. And I've had people who are on the right telling me that he basically discarded his socialism, and that's not true. What's true is he had I believe he had a Trotskyist orientation. I think Christopher Hitchens said that, and then he I think he basically just became more or less just a standard democratic socialist. Would you say that's correct?
Well, from what I've seen from Orwell, it seems he coined the term. Uh, in the you go back to like the 1800s or so, people used it interchangeably with social democracy, going back and forth, and eventually they settled on social democracy, and democratic socialism was just sort of like a unused term. But it was in the late 30s he wrote a paper detailing the differences between capitalism, socialism, fascism, and Stalinism, which he described as communism. And he used once in that term in that thing democratic socialism, small d, big S, because he was separating it from or contrasting it to Stalinism at that point. That was the big difference. Don't confuse the two. And then every paper before that, he never used some terms like that. Every paper afterwards, he used democratic socialism. So he seems to have coined the term. People probably said, "Well, I love the way that goes together. Use that, use that." And there was where our term came from until Bernie confused matters in 2015.
I, I have never. I mean, I've always. I've now, for me personally, and I guess you could say the wonderful thing, and maybe the thing that might be disconcerting at the same time about socialism is that there's no always one standard viewpoint of what it is. So we'll say what it is not. National socialism has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with any type of socialism. When we're talking about social democracy,
No, it was basically a stolen term, largely
communism.
trolling. Trolling was a big part of it. Like literally, Hitler talked about using socialist colors, the colors of his enemy, just to enrage them. He's literally describing trolling at that point. That's that's straight from Mein Kampf. You read Mein Kampf, he describes Marxism as the final stage of Judaism, and I think it's very clear that was not a fan of the Jews.
Of
So
course.
it's pretty clear that's not where he's going. There's tons in there where he's attacking anything on the left. Socialism, or the way that what Nazism is, it's fascism, where one specific form of elitism is racism. That's very prominent there.
It's interesting. With regard to the whole label and everything, is just yeah. I will tell these right wing people who wants to associate socialism with National Socialism, and I'll tell them, you realize that Hitler went after two socialist parties, the Social Democrats and the Communists. They were in the camps too, along with the Jews and the trade unionists and the LGBTQ
Actually, not at first. At first, it was only the socialists, the anarchists, the communists were thrown in. I forgot the name of the first concentration camp, but they created a concentration camp specifically for political enemies. That's where all the socialists went. Certainly, we were amongst those being killed. I believe that's part of what they consider genetic inferiority, that you would support socialism. And definitely, it should be stressed that when I said that it's a form of fascism, that fascism is the conjunction of three movements of the reaction, which is right-wing movement against the Enlightenment that came out right after the Enlightenment began. That would be nationalism, elitism, and irrationalism. Those were three movements that came out of it, and they came together to create fascism. Fascism is the attempt to recreate absolutist monarchy. It is on the exact opposite end of the spectrum from socialism.
I go along with that. Now, you mentioned about Bernie Sanders using the term democratic socialism, where it may confuse people when it really what Bernie Sanders is in American context. He's unfortunately these days maybe a slightly less shitty Democrat or a better Democrat, whichever way you want to put it. I used to be the quintessential Bernie bro, and I'm out. I'm no longer part of the Bernie cult. But as far as co-opting message, you could say that Bernie Sanders in 2016, 2020 was democratic socialism light. And I guess you could say MAGA is National Socialism light, in the sense that for a short while he didn't mean it, but Trump kind of borrowed a few little ideas that Bernie Sanders was throwing out there to try to appease people who weren't necessarily bigoted, but the two-time Obama voters that he was trying to do outreach to. And then, of course, once he's in power, and especially the second time around, we could see that we're talking about one of the most right-wing presidencies in ever. I mean, I didn't think you could get any worse than George W. Bush, and he's managed to make George W. Bush look like Hubert Humphrey in a better day.
Yeah, I would call MAGA straight up Nazis. That's what it is. I'm not sure that Trump realizes that. It's mainly Stephen Miller there, but Stephen Miller has such a tight hold. Yeah, it's a Nazi movement, straight up. Bernie, I wouldn't call him a better Democrat. He's not even a Democrat. He is a welfare liberal, which is one of the many forms of liberalism. Anarcho-capitalism is a form of liberalism. On the opposite end, the welfare liberals look to make sure, they say you can't really enjoy a right if you don't have access to it. So they make sure your basic needs are met and things like that. That's where all our welfare programs come from. It's a very good way to look at it, but they still see capitalism as a solution. You don't see Bernie really challenge capitalism. At most, he wants there to be worker buy-in, where some of the money that was taken from the workers' wages goes back to them, which isn't, not very sensible, but that's, his solution there. He began in the Socialist Party USA, or Socialist Party of America, then Socialist Party USA.
Yep.
One of the founding parties was the Liberty Union Party that he was part of. I know that he was good friends with Peter Diamondstone, who I had met. They apparently, would have long talks every night, going into the wee hours of the morning about politics and all that. He claimed before he died that Bernie was never actually socialist, but their big falling out, because Bernie was like their big person there in the party. It was under Liberty Union. He became mayor of Burlington. But Bernie sort of sold that in 1984 and backed Mondale, and that's where he left the party and all that. They had their big falling out and whatnot. And I will say Bernie has been consistent since 1984. Your viewers probably have no recollection of Bernie before that date. He is the same there. I would have been willing this past election to have voted for him for president if he ran, given where we were in the world there. But that's where he sold out back then. He won, and that's why he held on to calling himself a democratic socialist, because otherwise he'd have to admit that he changed in 1984.
Yeah, I would say this about Bernie. I used to, at one time, I would have said that maybe I was a decade ago or 20 years ago. I would have said I was where he was at ideologically, maybe slightly more mainstream than he was ever so. But I can't believe I'm saying this now, that I'm now to the left of Bernie Sanders. And again, I thank him for bringing the national conversation forward, because things that were not being addressed for decades, he forced it back into the national conversation. And we are doing what we're doing in a way because of Bernie, doing the what you want to call bread tube or online commentary in social media. A lot of channels and a lot of independent voices started to come across on the internet, and in that regard, and we have to thank Bernie, but unfortunately, he was cheated twice, and he decided to be too much of a team player, way too much of a team player, to the point. I mean, I don't hate Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is not my good friend like he claims. So
Yeah, I pretty much hate Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So he still owes me $600.
Well, I'm definitely not crazy about somebody who says he will veto Medicare for all if it comes on his desk. So I voted for Howie Hawkins in 2020. In fact, I haven't voted for a Democrat for president since Bill Clinton in 1992, and I'm sorry that I even did that. So
I voted Democrat twice. Once was in 2004 because I feared that we wouldn't have any more elections after Bush if he won a second term. And then I immediately regretted it. And then I did in 2024. I voted for Kamala, only because I realized, we're looking at Nazis now, like straight out in the street Nazis. I want to live. So let me vote for Kamala, even though she sucks horribly. It was painful, and I kind of regret it now.
Well, that's how I felt
But
about
it's I try my best not to give in to fear.
no, it was definitely something to be feared, and the rhetoric I hear all the time, and the actions of ICE, and they claim that the left are for censorship, but I have not seen the biggest assault on the First Amendment in my life as I've seen under this presidency. How in the world anybody could say that Trump is there to protect our free speech rights? Uh, they need to reassess how they view the world. They think he's protecting free speech rights.
He protects their rights to say whatever they want without consequence. But they're not worried about what other people can say. Is
Right.
the issue. It's certain cognitive dissonance. I think that there are definitely people out there who earnestly believe it because of the way the human mind works. You're able to block that kind of stuff out.
What really irks me though is how the term political correctness and woke is weaponized by the right. But when the right engages in it, nobody ever addresses it as that. Nobody addresses it as political correctness or wokeness, or they never acknowledge that the right wing are the ones doing cancel culture. I've even heard people say, I never heard of people, conservatives or the right, use cancel cultures against their political opponents. I'm like, the hell they don't. They invented cancel culture.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember Kid Rock shooting beer? I mean, they're bad at
Yes.
it. They're going to buy like tons of a product to go destroy it, which is wasteful, but they're giving the company their money.
Alcohol
Um,
abuse is what it is.
Ooh, but they're bad at a lot of things. They're bad at Nazism. I can't believe how incompetent they are this time around. I mean, I want you to think back. Shortly after Charlie Kirk's death, you had that guy who shot up the ICE facility and shot in the bus, killed three detainees. I think it was three of them, but not really that important. But you had the little things, little bullets that they found that said anti-ICE. That was a sign of incompetence because you know that nobody is going to write anti-ICE on a goddamn
Oh,
bullet.
I remember that.
And
Yeah.
that is not a real thing. But this tells me what I can tell you exactly what happened just by reasoning it out. I am certain that this is what happened. Somebody in the FBI was told by Cash Patel, you're going to go there, you're going to put some anti-ICE message to make it look like this was the left. This guy's like, I don't want to get fired, but he can't really fire me if I do it bad. So he just wrote anti-ICE in Sharpie, trying to be clear, hey, this is fake. And just no one really caught on that it was fake. You had people who figured that the FBI did that on purpose, but nobody realized this was a guy who was just trying to say, well, you can't fire me for insubordination. I technically did what you told me to do.
Yeah, you know what? I had not thought about that. I mean, yeah, I do think that was made up, but the way you explained it, that actually even makes more sense there. So yeah, and there's a lot of things that they try to pin on the left that I think a lot of it's a psyop operation and all that. Like for example, we all agree free Palestine. We all agree free Palestine all day long. But when they try to make it out like left wing people are making anti Semitic comments and saying Jew this and Jew that, which Zionism and Judaism are two different things. I think no. I think that was an operation to kind of to delegitimize the pro-Palestinian movement.
Yeah, well, you definitely see a lot of that. They like to tell on themselves, project horribly. Whatever they accuse the left of, there is a good 98% chance that that's something that they're actively doing. That's where they got the idea for it. And they are wildly anti-Semitic. I have seen it. There's a page called Right Wing News, which shares all the stuff about all these right-wing Republicans, MAGA people, pastors who are going accusing trans and LGBTQIA people of being child predators, all of them going to jail for crimes against children. A lot of that's in there. And they're sharing some hate mail. And of course, you get the case slur coming out, which I have no idea if the actual person who runs the page is Jewish or not, but that's right where this right winger went in attacking them. They are where all the Nazis went, where the KKK went. You look at the religious right, the evangelicals, most of them are incredibly racist against Jewish people. They just figure, oh, this is how we're going to get Jesus back, as if they're on the right side of that. The last thing they really want is for him to come back, because he'll beat the shit out of them. Yeah, there definitely, you don't see that much as much on the left. It's not non-existent. It does exist. I have to call out things on Facebook every so often, because you'll see somebody who on the left, but they'll share a sign like that. But it's a lot rarer on the left, because even Jews traditionally have been on the left with all of this. But yeah, Zionism is a nationalist movement, and its current iteration in Israel itself is another form of Nazism.
Absolutely. There was division in the early Zionist movement. I mean, there were. It doesn't exist anymore. The old labor Zionism thing. Bernie Sanders lived in the kibbutz in Israel, for example, in the 1960s, and that vision is absolutely non-existent anymore. We can argue all day long about whether it was right to create the country, but there was a left wing that did exist in that movement, but that movement is gone. I mean, you even look in the Knesset, the left, anything that was left wing, there's like what, 5 or 6 members of Knesset that are considered left wing, and it's like super right wing now.
I do not follow Israeli politics enough to tell you what percentage it is. Yeah. But I know enough for what I said, but not enough to comment specifically on that. Though I do want to note, I remember reading in the Detroit News right after the siege of Ramallah, which I think was 2003, about a Israeli Knesset member who was a Holocaust survivor. And he was weeping on the floor of the Knesset because they numbered their hands. And his big thing was, this is what the Nazis did to us. That was the left in 2003, at least. What it is now, I just know that the far-right Nazi types of Begin's party are in charge. If you look up, you familiar with Einstein's letter to the New York Times?
The what letter?
Albert Einstein's letter to the
maybe. Can you refresh me on that one?
It was not just Albert Einstein, but a large number of prominent American Jews signed onto this paper criticizing Menachem Begin for this was right after World War II, right when Israel was forming, and they were calling him a fascist in the Italian mold, talking about all his horrible racist war crimes and so on, and how Americans should not trust Menachem Begin and his party, which was not Likud yet. It later merged to become Likud with some other right-wing parties.
Probably was a member of the Irgun, probably.
I can't remember the name of it, but you can find it. It used to be New York Times still had it up, but there's still, like, Internet Archive will have a copy nowadays of Einstein's letter. It's a good thing to look up. Easy to remember what to Google.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
I'm full of trivia.
What now?
I'm full of trivia.
No, I know. I'm actually enjoying this conversation here. Yes. So, but and it's without any doubt with the fascism that we are living under today. I used to use the term fascism, as a hyperbole, like, oh, that person's such a far right fascist, and I mean, and we're talking about your Mitch McConnell types and everything like that. I mean, obviously, I don't think I think he's definitely an oligarch. I think he's an asshole, but I don't think that he favors extermination.
Collaborator.
Yeah, but what exists right now? I mean, when they basically took the state of Minnesota, and the administration basically launched an invasion of Minnesota like it's Iraq in 2003, just about. And, talking back to an ICE agent or what have you should not be, I don't believe in the death penalty, but, I would say fuck anybody who takes delight in seeing ICE agents, blast people away.
Well, once upon a time, I was absolutely 100% against the death penalty. I think that there's certain egregious crimes which the death penalty should apply, and that does apply to things like running death camps. I'm very alarmed that so many people who went into Alligator Alcatraz just fell off of the list. All the DHS records for them, like we all know where they are. I think we exterminated people already. That's already started. What they're building now is probably going to be much larger death camps. And when you're behind something like that, like Stephen Miller should get the death penalty. There's certain things where people need to see justice, and it's got to be true justice. It can't be something that doesn't fit the crime. And it should be safe for very, very rare things. Like murdering one person is not enough to justify it. But when you do mass murder, you kind of earn the death penalty.
Yeah, I still will. I mean, I understand that argument, but for me personally, I've always opposed capital punishment under any circumstances. But I certainly do believe in retribution for war crimes, and and I certainly think that not even a white collar prison should be there for the super elites that commit massive war crimes. They should be in a a shitty. I don't now. Not that I support shitty prison conditions, but if we're going to have they should be in prison with the other common prisoners. Is basically what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So.
I don't think I'm going to be able to academically back up what my feelings there.
Yeah,
at least not yet.
That's fine. So, anyway, as I said, for me, I've always sort of just all my life, kind of early moments I've ever conceptualized capital punishment. That was just not my thing. One of the reasons I joined the ACLU, was their opposition to the death penalty and everything. And what's really funny about I remember when Trump was elected, the ACLU came out with a statement saying that they have gone after every president, every presidential administration. They're telling the truth. They have. There's not been a presidential administration they haven't taken up since 1920. Technically, 1918 when they were the National Civil Liberties Bureau. A lot of people don't even know they were founded during World War I. So basically, what am I trying to say? Oh, yeah. So people claim that the ACLU engaged in Trump derangement syndrome because they're always after Trump. Well, Trump is hostile to civil liberties. They're not going after Trump because they're bored or virtue signal. They're not quite. It's not quite the same thing as the liberal resistance types. I mean, the ACLU is going after somebody. They're going after somebody, and Trump is very anti-civil liberties.
Yeah, and more importantly, he has to always be in the spotlight himself. He puts himself there. And I have to say, he has been one of the most active presidents when it comes to making uh, decisions like through executive orders. I mean, he's not the one actually doing it. People are putting it down, saying this is what it is, and he just signs it and then shows it up like a little kid. But um,
He is a
it
kid.
is he really puts himself there. It's not, you can't say Trump derangement syndrome. No, he is actively doing things, and you can't doubt if you're talking about you're so pro Trump because he's doing so much. Yeah, that's why people are getting people who oppose those things he's doing are going to be up in arms because he's constantly inserting himself into the news cycle. He's constantly threatening people. He's you you would have to expect that people are going to get pissed off. If we had a really good left wing president, I would imagine the right wingers would be up in arms constantly. I'm not going to call them, let's say Johnson is the name of the president. You have Johnson derangement syndrome. It's like, no, he's doing his job. It's pissing you off. Yeah, I expect that.
Hell, you don't even have to be a good left wing president. All you have to do is just be barely to the left of Mitch McConnell as a Democrat, and they'll think they'll think you're the guy from North Korea.
I'm going to blame them for that.
Yeah.
I blame them when they go after somebody like Joe Biden. It's like Joe Biden was halfway to you. He went out of his way after winning. He won the election, saying that Trump's immigration policies were crazy. We're going to go back to what they were. End of story. Then, like right after he comes in office, goes on this insanely anti-immigrant position. He basically adopted MAGA's 2016 immigration policy, which is one of the big reasons that Kamala lost. But that is who they're talking about, somebody who's basically giving them what they want. So I'm going to blame them for that. But if you have a good left-wing president, then I'm not going to blame him because he's going to be doing things or she's going to be doing things that's going to piss them off, and rightfully so.
You know, what's really interesting is the lie that they make about Biden. I mean, I don't like Biden. I mean, but here's the thing about Biden. Oh, when Biden was president, he and Kamala Harris opened up the border. I'm like, no. He didn't. He did not. Oh, he's giving them welfare. He's giving them health care that we don't get to have. I'm like, the Democrats don't even support universal health care for Americans. I don't think they're going to support universal health care for immigrants either.
Yeah. Well, to understand this, this is something I have looked into extensively. One of the big things that people have certain worldviews that they build up. It starts with your parents teaching you things as a toddler. You learn things and you learn, oh, this is my family. I can trust them. They tell me something, I believe it. And you build up all these little beliefs. When you get to be, somewhere between like 10 and 13, you start challenging it. Then as a teenager, you really challenge it. But you have this worldview that you are working with. And people are very protective of their worldview because that's their life's work. That's your mental work for your entire life, building up that thing. And if you knock one piece down, it theoretically should take down a lot. In reality, people tend to still believe the things that are built off of that thing that they kicked out. But people are very protective of their worldview because of that. So they get very, very, they question things. And we have some very bad actors with a lot of money who spend money trying to tell them these things. And once they believe them, it's very hard to get them to not believe them because that's their worldview that they're protecting, that the Democrats are evil and want all the immigrants in because they want the immigrants to vote for them and blah, blah, blah. If so, why won't the Republicans just be nice to them too and let all the immigrants in? Then they vote for Republicans. But of course, immigrants vote very, very rarely. What is it? They have 68 cases over the last 40 years or something.
Now, and they're not a monolith. Ideologically, they're not a monolith.
No.
I like for instance, the Hispanic voters, the Hispanic people. They talk about the Great Replacement theory. I'm like, oh, the white people are going to be outnumbered because of they'll use that Great Replacement theory argument. One, um, half of the Hispanic population are white themselves, and or mestizos that's kind of adjacent to white. So there is that. And two, they're not an ideological monolith.
No.
You got Hispanics that are going to vote the Democrat for democratic reasons, and if the Republican Party wasn't so hostile to the Hispanic community, you know, there's a lot of traditional Roman Catholics who are like uptight about abortion and LGBTQ rights and all that. So, they reach out to those folks. Not that I want to reach out to people's bigoted
That
minds.
would apply at this point, yes. It applied in 2020. It did not apply in 2024, though. That's why you saw so many votes lost from everybody, but so many Hispanic, you have 2 million Hispanic males vote for Trump that, more than had in 2020. And the reason for that, it seems quite simple as well. Like I said, they adopted that MAGA 2016 policy. So you have a whole bunch of Hispanic voters who both of them have the same immigration policy. Since that's what I was voting on before, there's no difference. What else is different? And you do have a lot of very conservative, socially Latinos that came in. They will, and so they look at the differences and say, I kind of like Donald Trump on this issue instead. So when they abandoned the Latino community, they left it open for a lot of them to say, hey, let me go with Trump because of this other reason. That's what, she threw away right there enough votes that she could have won. But there's like 3 other things that she did where she just threw away tons and tons of votes.
Well, I'll tell you one area where Kamala Harris fucked up. Going out of your way to be proud of Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, some of the worst people you can imagine. Going out of your way saying, oh, Liz Cheney endorses me, and hugging Liz Cheney and hugging Dick Cheney. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Some of the most evil people who were like the toast of Rush Limbaugh 20 years ago. And this is where the Democratic Party is now, hobnobbing with people that Rush Limbaugh praised nonstop 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm hoping that my next video will be on that. Because the issue is median voter theory. It's this very simplistic model where you line up everybody's political views on a left-right spectrum, from one end to the other, and then the goal is you want to get that median vote, the one right in the middle, because that means that everybody to your side of them is going to vote for you, because you're closer to them than your opponent. The biggest problem with that is assumes that people remain voting in that case. But if you go too far to the center, a whole bunch of people on your end, in this case the left end, are going to say, I'm going to vote third party or I'm not going to vote. You could tell that they should know this is the problem, because every time they lose an election, they blame the left.
Oh, yeah.
They say, you didn't vote for us. Well, then isn't your median voter theory not working? Maybe you need to stop going towards the center, bring out Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, because that's what they were doing. Kamala was desperately going for that, because the Democratic Party hires consultants who have no idea what they're doing, who learned one theory in the 1980s or the 1990s in grad school and just stuck with it without trying to learn beyond that. They didn't adapt, and so you get this kind of nonsense where they just throw away their chances of winning because they keep thinking, oh, the left has nothing to do. They're forced to vote for us. And they get mad when we don't.
Yeah. To them, it's still 1996, and they're still thinking in that DLC mindset, something that they should just let die. is the Democratic Leadership Council, which exists in the Clinton Foundation, by the way. It still exists, but it's part of the Clinton Foundation. But this reaching toward the center, the left, they try to have it both ways about the left. Oh, the left has no power. They have no influence. They can't get anything done. Yet they're blamed for everything. And it's like a chain of command. The Republicans punch left. The Democrats, they punch at the squad and Bernie and the squad punches at, at the people who looks at the two-party system with disdain that's actually on the left. There are right-wing people who hate the two-party system too. But, as far as the left, people on the left, people who looks at the Democrats and see them as basically something to the right of the British Conservative Party. That's how I look at the Democrats right now. They're to the right of the UK Tories. Not a good place to be, by the way.
Oh God. The way that they do that, what the squad needs to do, they need to create their own party. DSA's entryism, which is Trotskyist, was a failed strategy. We have gone from the 1970s that's when they started. Back in the early 70s, you would see people in the Democratic Party calling for the types of things that the squad's calling for today. So they waited until the Democratic Party moved so far to the right, and they seem like they're way far to the left, but they didn't. They could just enter the Democratic Party as Democrats in the 70s because they're pushing for the same stuff that the Democrats were for in the 70s. They didn't really change the Democrats at all. And what we really need to do is get the third parties together, and we need a movement to actually say, we're done with the Democrats. So they need their own party. I have a video. It could be too long for here. Another time if you want to talk about it. Idea called the Party for Parties. It's a way to bring third parties together without risking their memberships to try to build a coalition that would run on a minimalist platform, just like Bernie Sanders type stuff. But they're going to change the political system through constitutional convention. You're going to have your your instant runoff voting. You're going to have proportional representation, and you're going to make it so we have a multi-party system. Second, we have that, we all fly back apart, have our own parties, and we can actually get elected and make a difference.
We won't be able to talk about that 100% today, but I would love to have you back in a couple of weeks. Maybe you'd like to come back in a couple of weeks and we can discuss.
I'd be fine with it. Okay. Anytime on Wednesdays are perfectly fine with me. Otherwise, I guess I could do evenings anytime from Thursday to Sunday.
Okay, we'll definitely do that. That sounds like something that'd be right up my alley to discuss. Because something that could push the left. I've always kind of argued for a labor party, some kind of a labor party, where the left can kind of put aside their differences, various different political parties and factions, and DSA can join in. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I was and just kind of. I mean, we're not going to agree on everything on the left but to find a way where they can kind of cooperate in an alliance and counterbalance the two-party system. And I look at Canada because Canada is the most culturally similar country to the United States. They, so pretty much a binational linguistic country in the sense that they have French and English. We have Spanish and English here. We're talking about a country that has the culture is very similar and all that. So I look at the New Democratic Party of Canada, who are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. They're not the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, but they're better than what we got here. I
How
will. I
about just
mean,
any country?
yeah. Well, you know Dwight Welch, right?
That name I know. I
Yeah.
feel, was he part of the Socialist Party of
Yes.
Michigan
Yes.
years
Yes.
and years ago?
Yeah. Well, Dwight Welch and I had a discussion about Canada once, and he agreed with what I had to say. And he's going to have a podcast soon, by the way. But he said that we I said basically that when I look at the Canadian politics, that those there are more than three parties, but we'll focus on the three parties here. I
You're
consider
an
the liberal,
aberration.
yeah, I consider the Liberal Party, like a less shitty version of the Democrats. I consider the Conservative Party a less shitty version of the Republicans, and I consider the NDP as a more efficient squad. Like this, if the squad was a party and they actually had their shit together, not perfect, but yeah,
Yeah, they are a bit of an aberration because they have the same thing as us: first past the post, majority plurality wins system.
right.
They broke Duverger's law, which is the first law in political science, because they have multiple parties. So they had to amend it to say you have two parties on the local level, as opposed to nationally when you have a first past the post system. But they did get the multiple parties. And we could potentially, if my idea doesn't work there, maybe we try having local parties that overtake, Democrats or Republicans in that state.
Yeah, yeah, because there are NDP. I had a coworker, a very conservative coworker at my previous job, who's from Texas, um, and he and I were talking, and I told him about Alberta, the NDP winning in Alberta, and I said, and I'll use his real name, James. I said, James, yeah, he doesn't watch this podcast. I said, James, let me tell you about what happened in Alberta. The NDP won, and he was kind of perplexed, and he was like, "What do you mean?" I said, Alberta is the Texas of Canada as far as the politics is concerned. Imagine if the Green Party ran in Texas, took over the gubernatorialship, and took over the legislature. That's what it would have been equivalent to seeing the NDP win in Alberta. And yeah, it was just kind of like he kind of short circuited at the thought of the Green Party taking over Texas.
That would be the day.
Mm. I
But
think it's possible they could win some city council seats in Austin and places like that down the road, possibly.
but we need a multi-party system and we need proportional representation. I pray to God we don't do multiple districts, just one district nationwide. The idea where we tie our representation to states is so 18th century. That's fit back when people thought themselves as Pennsylvanians or Virginians before they were Americans. Now we're Americans. Our state's a second thought to us. We should have one big district with however many seats we decide, 1,000, 5,000. Mind you, we started where the Constitution says we can't have fewer than 30,000 people represented by a representative. We're at 780,000. If we were to uncap the House, as they put it, and that's out there for Mr. Beat if he ever watches this, we could theoretically have 10,000 people, representatives in the House, and meet the constitutional requirements because we have been so long since we've even raised the number of representatives. There's people aren't represented nearly as directly. You can't get a hold of your representative because we just have way too few people. To raise it to 1,000 or 1,500 is nothing.
Yeah, never thought about it. I never really thought about it that way. I've always sort of just viewed it as we can have ballot access reforms, state by state, like a minimum threshold, 1,000 signatures. I would say that's, personally, I would say go to the board of election and say, I want the Mickey Mouse party on the ballot. No problem, it's on the ballot. But
Yeah, that's how it used to be.
yeah,
All these restrictions came up in the 1920s and 30s
yeah.
with the major parties saying in different states that, oh, these third parties will just fill up the ballot. It had never happened. They had no problems with having that. It was a way to keep competition off. And that's a big part of why we're an oligarchy. I hope we get to go into that if I'm on again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now I'll tell you a little bit of trivia. I live here in North Carolina, and as you know, I was a member of the Socialist Party USA. I'm a I guess you could call me a friend or a fellow traveler these days. But here's the thing about the Socialist Party history wise. In 1932, Norman Thomas received 5,000 votes in this state, and I live in Johnson County, which is just outside of Raleigh, Wake County. And I was checking in the library, the local paper. I think it was the Smithfield Herald, looking for the election results. Norman Thomas received 50 votes in Johnston County in 1932. And I doubt if anybody's still alive, but it's I just thought that was interesting to find. I just wanted to learn about that from around here. I just thought that was fascinating personally, but that's just how much of a weirdo I
am. Yeah, we used to do a lot better back in the day. And yeah, Thomas, you know that Martin Luther King Jr. wrote an essay about Norman Thomas.
The greatest man I've ever known, I think it's called.
Either greatest or bravest. I can't remember.
Bravest, that's it. I'm sorry, the bravest man I've ever known.
Yeah, and he is. Yeah, that was a fun one. But yeah, he was very close. And the plan in 1968, have we not had our big breakup and we didn't run a candidate at all that year, it was supposed to be a Norman Thomas, Martin Luther King Jr. ticket.
I could go along with that.
Yeah. And how much better the world would be if we could permanently claim Martin Luther King Jr. that way.
Yeah. You ever seen the movie Take Her, She's Mine with what's his name? Jimmy Stewart from 1963?
No, not one. I'm not a big cinephile.
Okay.
I have not seen that one.
Well, in the movie, his daughter went to the university, and I forgot the name of the rest of the cast of the movie. But anyway, he's reading a letter from his daughter to his wife and I guess the other kids on the table, and he's reading, you know how Jimmy Stewart talk, and so he's and there's one part where he's like reading his daughter's letter. It's like, I went to hear a speech by Norman Thomas on universal nuclear disarmament, and it was like it was kind of like a footnote or a joke, of a joke. I guess by 1963, people knew him. They kind of viewed him as this sort of the Ralph Nader and the Bernie Sanders of the day before Ralph Nader and Bernie Sanders kind of bursted onto the scene. I guess that's kind of the way society looked at Norman Thomas, I think.
I believe he was actually one of the central forces behind creating the ACLU.
He was the national director, and he was one of the founders. He was the national director, I think, until like the early 50s.
Yeah, you probably know more of the details than I do because I couldn't have named the position.
Yeah, he and Corliss Lamont, and I'm not a Marxist-Leninist, but I'm going to agree with him more than I will Norman Thomas when it came to the ACLU, because there was a no communists on the national board policy that Norman Thomas implemented. I mean, he believed in defending the civil liberties of communists, but he did not want the communists to be in the leadership of the ACLU. And so, and they had that, and in a way, I may have. I can understand maybe to a degree why he did it. In the age of McCarthyism, especially, there was fears about the ACLU getting attacked by the government, I guess you could say. So it was kind of a defense mechanism. But Corliss Lamont, who thought that that was not the thing to do, and she believed in civil liberty. She will allow communists to join the national board. Of course, the ACLU lifted that ban in 1976, and they dedicated. It goes back to the 1930s. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn was kicked off the national board of the ACLU, and she was a wobbly, but she was also a communist. And he was friends with her, but he kind of, and she never held any ill will toward him for it. She understood, but there is, I think there is an Elizabeth Gurley Flynn Center in New York for the ACLU.
I might be a little bit edgy about Trotskyists in particular, because they have the habit that they join organizations where they plan on either taking over, or if they fail, they will destroy that organization. I have seen that happen, or these attempts at that happening multiple times in the Socialist Party itself.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my concern. I don't know if that was Norman Thomas's concern, but I wouldn't be so much worried about McCarthy and that. I'd be just use it as leverage to say "fuck you" in the press.
Trotskyism. When it comes to Trotskyism, I'm not one, but I've had some bad experiences with some Trotskyists, but there are some Trotskyists I have gotten along with. I mean, to me, I take them on a case-by-case basis.
It's not their politics as much as it is their organizing strategy, their entryism. That's the issue.
Yeah, they are kind of they're some aspects. I mean, with neoconservatism, that one person I'll tell you about that's from Texas, I had to explain about the origins of neoconservatism that he couldn't quite grasp. And I had an anarcho-capitalist libertarian coworker that backed me up. And he's like, "You agree with him?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, he's right. He's exactly right about where neoconservatism came from." And it again, he kind of short-circuited on the whole concept of, yeah, sure. Ben Shapiro is not a Trotskyist. He's never been a Trotskyist, but you take it back a couple of generations, you can see where his politics come from. He may not even be aware of that himself. A lot of neocons are not even aware they're neocons, and they're not even aware they're Trotskyist ancestors.
Yeah, well, not all of them made the full journey. Some of them got picked up on the way.
Mm-hmm. That's what happened. And when I say ancestors, I don't mean in the stereotype that people make about neoconservatives being Jewish Trotskyists. I mean, maybe some were and some weren't. There's people who weren't. So I mean,
well, the Shockmanites. I don't know if they were all Jewish or not. I guess Shockman could be a Jewish name. I don't remember.
Yes, Shackman was Jewish. Yeah. And a lot of people are not. It's really weird that you mentioned that because Jackson Hinkle. Are you familiar with Jackson Hinkle?
Sadly, I do know who he is. I've luckily never met him, but I've heard from him from a few places. Ran the Stalinist cult.
Well, I used to like his show in the very beginning, but he's I'm not like let's see. I'm not like Russian phobic, but he's gotten to like Putin is so wonderful, and I'm like, no, he's not. But I am a third camp when it comes to. I do believe in third camp internationalism still, and on the Russian-Ukraine conflict, I am a third camp internationalist. But so I get it from both sides. Some people will say, "Oh, you're pro Putin" on one side. The other side say, "No, you're pro Zelensky." I'm like, "No, I actually despise them both." You can despise them both.
You can definitely. I think my stance on Ukraine has been. It started with, well, they're both a bunch of fascists fighting it out. I don't want to take any side. To, okay, well, the Russians attacked civilians. So now I will give some critical support to Ukraine. Then the Ukrainians, like 2 years in, killed a bunch of Russian civilians on purpose, bombing a city. I said, okay, I'm back to neutrality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing also. There's a lot of criticism about Putin, but neo-Nazis that people try hiding in the Ukraine. They're like, oh, there's no neo-Nazis over there. Yes,
They're
there
in both
are.
the Ukrainian and Russian militaries.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. And as I said, this Azov battalion thing, some people say, oh, that's kind of like a bunch of neo-Nazis in Idaho. No, not quite the same thing. Is a little worse. They're in the government, they're in the military, and the followers of Stepan Bandera, who collaborated with the Nazis.
Yeah, Ukraine had a very specific squad or something that was completely neo-Nazis that I believe got wiped out. No tears for that. But yeah, they definitely were. They had attacked before the war. Those neo-Nazis had attacked a pride parade in Kiev, and the government did nothing to really punish anybody for that. They let it go because they figured, well, we need these neo-Nazis in the East.
Well, some people will say, well, he's Zelensky, he's Jewish. And can you explain that? Well, we had a black president, and we still have neo-Nazis in this country. What point is that? What point is that? When people use that analogy, and again, I say fuck both countries in the sense that both countries treat the LGBTQ people horribly. I can't sit there support a country that's going to do that. So I have to be in the third camp internationalist direction when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. So, and I understand people who are opposed to Putin, but I also understand people who are opposed to Zelensky. So, and the kill list that they have,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
countries with horrible governments, not necessarily bad people, but bad governments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not anti-Ukrainian as far as the people are concerned. To hate Ukrainians for their leadership is like hating Jewish people for what Israel did.
Oh, I wasn't
two different things. Two different things.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure in case there's somebody out there watching, thinking, "Oh, that's what we're going."
No. So that's yeah. Anyway, yeah. So let's see. We have here. Do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think there is anything focused enough that I really have to get across, especially since you seem interested in having me on in the future.
Yeah, I will probably. How about the week after my birthday? My birthday's on March 5th. So how about the following week?
We should be able to fit something in there. No problem.
Okay. Because I'm going to be I'm going to have a birthday live stream on probably on March 3rd on a Tuesday. I'm going to probably do a birthday live stream. I that's going to be a yearly tradition for me. So I did it this last year.
They tend to be.
Yeah. So I'll be 57 in about less than 2 weeks.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Almost there, ready for retirement.
5 more years and you can get Social Security.
Social Security and my pension. Yeah, so I got that as well. Drunk karaoke, Willie. On Thanksgiving 2023, I did a karaoke show, and I sang 80s new wave songs. Very scary, But anyway, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, let's do that. If you stick around for a minute, I can talk to you when I sign off here.
All
Uh,
right.
all right. So everyone, this is Veronica Tash, and where can we find you, Veronica?
You can find me on YouTube. Uh, the handle is at Veronica Tash 777 because somebody else already had Veronica Tash. I think just a viewer. I don't think they ever uploaded a video. I did send a Spotify link, which is the Revolutionary Humanity Project. That's just starting. We only have one episode up for that so far. And if you really want to see old stuff, yttribune.com. That's Yellow Turban Tribune, just the initials for the first two words. That's where you get long writing. So, and they are long. So, make sure you're up for reading before you go click there.
Okay, I'm putting the Spotify for everybody to see. I know that's a lot of words, but they can come back and just kind of type it in.
Okay. Copy and paste. Don't try to type that.
Yeah, copy and paste. Yeah, they can copy and paste. Let me get that other. Yeah, Veronica Tash 777. Yeah, that should be pretty easy there. Hold on a second here. Let me copy and I'll put this on the screen for everybody. Okay, and all right. Okay, there we go. All right. Again, y'all can copy and paste this, and her, as I say, you can see there Veronica Tash 777. So just add that to youtube.com/ and then at Veronica Tash 777. That's easy enough. So, all right, let me go ahead and make my final announcement, everybody. If you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment in any way if you disagree with what we have to say. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we're all the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show. And remember, free Maduro, free Palestine, free healthcare for all, and keep our First Amendment free. Until next time, folks, fuck ICE.
Fuck ICE.
Fuck ICE. Absolutely. No apologies. I'll say it again. Fuck ICE.